Seriously. Bill Sweeney? Anyone? Bill Sweeney! The R360 model appears designed to generate profits and return them to a very small elite. Bill Sweeney. So rugby players that want to sign an R360 contract will most likely do so knowing they will not be able to play international rugby, depending on their nationality, because 8 of the biggest unions in the world have banded together, released a joint statement that says effectively, if you play for them, then you don't play for us. An interesting development, big news, lots to talk about, lots I want to get into. And please tell me what you think in the chat down below. I know you will, and I'm sure the opinions will be strong. They seem to be in lots of different directions. Give the video a thumbs up and hit subscribe. I want to get right into the weeds on this one. I think there's lots to unpack. I always think there's stories behind the stories, and there's layers. And I want to come at this without an agenda. Or, well, because that's not really possible. I want to at least acknowledge the agendas that I have and try and factor them into my thinking. Because, for example, if you are really passionate about a club side, if you follow a club team in one of the big domestic competitions, you will probably, I would guess, hate the idea of R360. And that was my initial reaction when I first heard about it. I'm a massive fan of club rugby. I've watched the Premiership for years. I spent 8 years working on the Premiership and Champions Cup with BT Sport. It was literally my job, and I loved it. I always have done. The URC, I think, is a brilliant competition. I love watching that. The top 14 is just god tier club rugby. I've invested in Pro D2 to make it viewed by people in the UK and Ireland that couldn't see it. That's how much I care about club rugby. This weekend, I'll be going to watch a championship game in England. I'll be watching Coldie versus Richmond because I am one of the weirdos. I am a proper rugby nerd. And I don't think R360 is aimed at me. And if you're a fan of club rugby already, I don't necessarily think it's aimed at you. So I definitely have that agenda perspective when I come at R360 is I'm a long-term massive club rugby fan. Second thought I have though, which just kind of gives a different perspective, is I have a very soft spot in my heart for London Irish. My brother played for them for several years. I'm really proud, so is my family, that he's part of the history of that club. A history of a club, by the way, which just like that got evaporated due to the financial mismanagement of English club rugby. And there are people in England, at unions around the world, and at World Rugby who have driven our sport in so many ways into the ground and have made an absolute mess of it. So I also come at this perspective with those eyes on as well. And that definitely gives me a different perspective on things. So where are we at with R360, which is a so-called rebel league, which, how would you describe it? It's like 20% F1, 20% IPL, 20% World 7 Series, 20% the hundreds, and what are we up to? That's that 80%. Oh yeah, and after, just 20% rugby as well. Why not? You get the idea. Where are we at with it? Well, they're still saying it's going to happen next year, despite the latest bump in the road, which I'll come on to. Recruiting talent, got the locations of the franchises, host cities, funding for the first 3 years, apparently. What is the offer? Well, for the players, more money for less rugby, owning their IP, being able to live anywhere. There's plenty of upsides for a player. For the fans, well, it sounds like they're trying to make it more about events. So it would not just be the rugby, it would be a whole weekend, gigs, activities, trying to reach a new audience. And as I've already touched on, I don't think I'm one of the people that R360 is aiming at. And probably, if you're watching this channel, you might not be either. That's the reality of it. So, for example, right, so I used to work on, as I said, I used to work on BT Sport, used to be a reporter. And on a decent day, when there was a game on at the weekend, 200,000 people watching. Well, that's a good day. 200,000 people. For a Premiership final, when it's free to air on the telly as well, 1 million. So 1 million at most watch club rugby. How many watch England in the Six Nations every year? 8 million. So as I see it, there are 7 million people which quite like rugby, but aren't really interested in club rugby. And R360 is aiming at those people, which is not me. And it might not be you. But I think that's the thinking. of this tournament. Where are they at with it? As I say, they're still saying it's going to happen. It got announced. It got a mixed reception. You can see my previous videos on R360 in the channel. They said they were not going to seek World Rugby ratification until next June, delaying it from November. A lot of people saw that as this thing is never going to get off the ground, never going to happen. And then we've got the latest news this week, this statement, the unions of New Zealand, Australia, South Africa from the Southern Hemisphere Rugby Championship sides and 5 of the 6 nations in the 6 nations, you've got Ireland, England, Scotland, France and Italy, have all come together to make a statement which, well, fundamentally says to the players, you're on your own if you go. I mean, there's more to it than that, and we'll go on to it. My wild speculation is that this statement is coming out now, because I was sort of asked these extra questions. Why now? What's going on? What's the story behind the story? My best guess, and I don't know, but my best guess is R360 was getting very, very close to jumping through all World Rugby's hoops and to recruiting the players that they needed. And the reason I say that is because rugby cannot agree on anything. Like, a global season needs to happen. And most fans recognise this. The unions cannot get it organised. And yet they all get together and go, okay, yeah, well, go on then. We'll all sign this document together. So that again, wild speculation. And maybe I'm being too cynical of just how rugby is administered. But my speculation is R360 we're getting pretty close. Let's actually examine the statement itself. And again, I'm coming at this as someone who instinctively wants to hate it, but I also, and look, international rugby has never been better. It is riding high. But I also come at this as, despite the fact I love club rugby so much, I also recognise it's broken. A club that that's really special to me went bust. And there were others. And there are owners of clubs losing money left, right and centre. It's broken. So you can accept those two things at the same time. What is the statement? The statement says, quote, "We are urging extreme caution for players and support staff considering joining the proposed R360 competition." Freudian slip. Interesting they said support staff as well, isn't it? Because I'd only been thinking about the players, but of course, coaches, physios, analysts, referees, all of that would be affected as well, wouldn't it? Quote, "We all welcome new investment and innovation in rugby and support ideas that can help the game evolve and reach new audiences. Except this one." No, they don't say that. But they say, "But any new competition must strengthen the sport as a whole, not fragment or weaken it." Now, that seems like pretty sound justification to me. I'm actually okay with that. Here's the thing, though, and again, where I just want to try and get a layer deeper than maybe you're hearing anyone talking about elsewhere. Can we just hold a mirror up to the unions and just ask them, are you doing what you say? Because they've just said, let's go through that again. Any new competition must strengthen the sport as a whole, not fragment or weaken it. Nations Cup. You know, the Nations Cup due to start next year, where the top 12 teams, the strongest unions, have a competition for just themselves, shutting out people outside, giving less opportunity for Tier 2 teams to play Tier 1 teams to get themselves bigger financial revenue. Is that helping the game as a whole? I mean, you could make the case it is because of the money. But is it weakening the sport as a whole? Is it helping Chile or Uruguay or Portugal or Georgia? Just a thought. Also, the greatest rivalry. Look, I'm here for the greatest rivalry series next year. South Africa and New Zealand, that is going to be epic. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. I love the old school tour idea. However, I'm just being devil's advocate here. I like the idea. I'm for it. But it's a new competition. Is it strengthening the sport as a whole? I don't think it's strengthening it if you're Australia or Argentina. And you could argue it's fragmenting and weakening it overall. I mean, like I say, I'm okay with it, but I just want, you can't, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, as the saying goes. So as long as we hold people to the standards that they set for others, then that's fine with me. They say We must take a view on whether they add to rugby's global ecosystem, for which we are all responsible, or whether they are a net negative to the game. World Club Championship. There's another one. Here we go. This is one issue I have with the statement. Again, so far I'm kind of the words that are being said, totally on board with. I would say, do you always do that yourselves to the unions, or are you just lecturing? This one I do take issue with. R360 has given us no indication as to how it plans to manage player welfare, how players would fulfill their aspirations of representing their countries, and how the competition would coexist with the international and domestic calendars so painstakingly negotiated in recent years for both men's and women's game. Player welfare is about the only thing you cannot have a pop at R360 for, because fundamentally players earn more money by playing less rugby. Let's just examine some of the numbers. International rugby calendar at the minute, what is it, 12, 13 games a season? Some unions play a 14th or whatever game outside of international windows to make a bit more money, and then say that player welfare is the most important thing, which I always, that sort of raises an eyebrow. And then, so you've got 12, 13, 14 games at most, international matches a year. The limit for any player's workload over a season is meant to be 30 games. So that means you've got 16 games left. Okay, fine. Premiership and URC season, if you end up winning it, is 20 games. Top 14 is 30. So how do you square that circle? But then on top of that, you add the Champions Cup, which is potentially a further 9 games. And then you want to add a World Club Cup on top as well. But player welfare is the most important thing, yeah? R360 is, I mean, again, there's lots of things you can dislike it for. There's lots of things you can criticize it for. There's lots of things you can say, I don't want it to happen for this or for that. I think player welfare is the most spurious reason that there is. And I'm gonna call the unions out and say that's just no. When you can get around a table and sort out a global season that actually addresses the workload of players and actually means that some players aren't having 12-month seasons, not getting a proper rest and a proper pre-season, then maybe you can point the finger at other competitions and talk about player welfare. So, come on. That's a challenge for you lot. Go on then. You've all agreed on this statement. Now get round the table and sort out a global season, please. Okay. The R360 model rather appears to be designed to generate profits and return them to a very small elite. Seriously. Bill Sweeney? Anyone? Bill Sweeney! The R360 model appears designed to generate profits and return them to a very small elite. Bill Sweeney. Right, honestly, I read that and I think, take England's name off that statement. Take England's name off, because I'm not going to take a lecture that mentions that from anyone where Dollar Bill is the CEO who lined his own pockets very nicely with his bonuses and the rest of his board. Also, take Scotland off it as well, maybe, because of Mark Dodson, former CEO of Scotland, who did similar as well. The cheek, the cheek. And so, look, as I say, there's lots of reasons not to like R360, but in terms of this statement, practice what you preach and don't lecture us on something that, I don't know. I don't know about you, but I read that and went, come on. Really? I don't know. Do you know what? Fundamentally, I think I trust the players. I trust the players. I mean, let's get rid of this. I've been a brother of a professional. Well, I am a brother of someone who was a professional rugby player. I've lived with professional rugby players. I've spent a lot of time with professional rugby players. I've interviewed a lot of professional rugby players. I feel like I understand what makes professional rugby players tick, and I trust them. I fundamentally trust them. If R360 is a bobbins competition, if R360 is a non-starter, if it's a Mickey Mouse competition, if it's bad for player welfare, I trust the players to make that decision. Many players don't just take the biggest cash sum They do what's right for themselves, for their family, for their future. They eat, they train, they work. And fundamentally, I think rugby players deserve to earn the most that they possibly can, because their career can be cut short with one injury, and they certainly don't earn enough to take care of themselves for the rest of their lives like, top level footballers do. I hope one day that's the case, because it will mean that rugby's really, really popular and millions of people are watching it, and it's generating billions of pounds. That's a long road to get to that point. In the meantime, I want players to earn what they can. I want them to have all the opportunities that they can and enjoy travelling, enjoy different cultures, all of that good stuff. I trust the players. If R360 is awful, as people claim it is, players won't sign up. Let the market decide. If no one watches it, it won't last. So there's lots of arguments in all cases. I think one of the things, and at least I would say, I've just pointed out maybe the arguable hypocrisy from certain unions in the statement. I think I'm consistent in my opinion, because I also would let Jack Willis play for England if Steve Borthwick wanted to select him. I don't like standing in the way of players doing their job and representing their country. Now, in the case of playing in France, if you're English, if playing in France meant you weren't available for some of the England training camps, and therefore Steve Borthwick didn't want to pick Jack Willis, well, fine. Well, then you take that risk. You go there. You might take the consequences. But just, I don't like this blanket. It feels like they're controlling players. It feels like they're holding players hostage to preserve the status quo of the club competitions that in many cases aren't working. They're broken in a lot of ways. And this statement, I think, could be argued that it is an example of the club game not working. Because if the club game was thriving, they wouldn't need to tell players not to go anywhere else. It feels like a restriction of trade, and I don't like that. From the players, thinking of the players first and foremost, who are the warriors that we watch go out there and play the game every week, I just feel sorry for them. I feel like it's wrong in that sense. Whatever you think of R360, and I have very mixed thoughts on R360. I'm not certain it will be a success. It sounds like it's going to happen regardless, but this could be a significant blow to whatever the competition looks like. And also, to go back to the statement, I'm fine with the statement from those 8 unions. Can you put some of that into action yourself, though? Can you judge yourself by those same standards? Just a thought. Just a thought. Let me know what you think. Like I say, I told you I'd get into the weeds on it. I told you there's nuance and shades of grey. It's easy, and what you see on social media often is like, this is awful or it's brilliant. Nothing's like that. And definitely not on this channel. So let me know what you think, and I will see you on the next one.